Greenwald and company on Black Socialists, and this is Glenn Beck. So let me read the caption here, and this is Glenn Beck's tweet. Glenn Greenwald tells me the Biden DOJ, Department of Justice, just set an extremely dangerous precedent by trying to turn 4 Black socialist radicals into felons for speaking out against the war in Ukraine. I don't care what your politics are. We have a First Amendment. Now, this here is one of the great values of Glenn Greenwald. He's allowed in these spaces with conservatives such as Glenn Beck, Tucker Carlson, where he's able to insert left messages, or what we would call left messages, or messages that shouldn't be left but are left messages. And this is one of them. If you believe in free speech, if you believe in freedom and liberty and all these other things, you should be speaking up on this too, even if you don't agree with the group's beliefs. So let's listen to Glenn and Glenn speak. That's Greenwald and Beck.
This is actually a chance for the constitutionalist right to actually stand up and make this an issue, because we have nothing in common with these people. And I don't want anyone silenced, anyone. And this is a chance for us to stand up and do what the press will never do for somebody on the right. They should have stood up with Alex Jones and said, we don't like the guy. We don't like the guy. But he has a right to say what he's going to say. The same thing we should be now doing on this side, because A, it'll just confuse the hell out of them, and it will show that we actually have principles behind what we say.
You have to have principles behind what you say. Otherwise, what it seems like you're saying is just kind of a special pleading for your own allies. And I'm really glad to hear that, because as you know, as well as anybody, Glenn, it is very common for people on the right to be accused of being Russian agents. That is probably the go-to accusation by establishment liberals and kind of the never Trump wing of the Republican Party, that accuses everybody who disagrees with them of being a Kremlin agent, of serving the Russian government. And if you now got the Biden Justice Department expand what that means and allow them to turn you into a felon, not just ruin your reputation or ban you from social media, but prosecute you criminally under federal law, that is an extremely dangerous precedent, including for lots of people who have different ideologies than these defendants.
So, I mean, there's a couple of things here. This is just another issue that there could be a lot of overlapping policy beliefs, and that's what conservatives, libertarians on this particular issue involving the Huru Black Socialists. And to have people, again, like Glenn Beck and Tucker Carlson, I don't agree with on literally nothing, except for maybe this and like Ukraine. I don't know what Glenn Beck's stance is on Ukraine. I don't listen to him. So when some on the boutique left, the NATO left, come out and call Glenn Greenwald, oh, he's a right winger. Look, he's over here with the Tucker Carlson doing this. He's over here with Tucker Carlson doing that. Why isn't AOC on Tucker Carlson talking about the Black socialists that are being singled out by the Biden administration? Why isn't it Bernie Sanders calling into the big Glenn Beck show to say, hey, you right wingers, come and support this if you are for free speech? Why is it left up to these people who the NATO left and the boutique left are calling right wingers to do these things? Why is that? Like, where is AOC? Where are them? Where are they on this? Now, if I'm wrong, if anybody has heard them say anything about this, like what the hell is going on? People can't have opinions in opposition to the Ukraine war or their views on anything, or are they going to get prosecuted? Like, it's absurd. So let's let it finish out here.
You have to have principles behind what you say. Otherwise, what it seems like you're saying is just kind of a special pleading for your own allies. And I'm really glad to hear that, because as you know, as well as anybody, Glenn, it is very common for people on the right to be accused of being Russian agents. That is probably the go-to accusation by establishment liberals and kind of the never Trump wing of the Republican Party that accuses everybody who disagrees with them of being a Kremlin agent, of serving the Russian government. And if you now got the Biden Justice Department expand what that means and allow them to turn you into a felon, not just ruin your reputation or ban you from social media, but prosecute you criminally under federal law, that is an extremely dangerous precedent, including for lots of people who have different ideologies than these defendants.
So that's Glenn Greenwald on Glenn Beck. So you have Glenn Beck now, who are saying things, not a lot of things, but saying some things, one or two things that's to the left of the squad of the Bernie Sanders of all the progressive Democrats. You have Matt Gaetz, who in a hearing was questioning the chief or the highest ranking person in AFRICOM on training people to commit coups. Why isn't AOC, the squad, and Bernie Sanders doing that stuff? We have, Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus forcing the vote and extracting things they want. Why isn't the squad doing that? So we're not going to, these people are like, we're supposed to sit back and wait for the squad to do this before we acknowledge that some people are doing it and they just happen not to be on the left. Let's go to the next video, which is the Tucker one. So here's Tucker Carlson and Glenn Greenwald talking about the same topic. Is a slightly longer segment than the last one we just did with Glenn Beck.
The latest group of Americans to find their constitutionally protected opinions become felonies are, believe it or not, an organization of black nationalist left-wingers who oppose the war in Ukraine. The DOJ has just charged many in this group with seeking to, quote, sow discord, spread pro-Russia propaganda, and interfere in elections within the United States. Now, there's no evidence they interfered with any election. You're allowed to be pro-Russia. You're allowed to be pro-anything you want in the United States. Saying things the government doesn't like, having unfashionable opinions or opinions that are out of step with Joe Biden's opinions, that is not a crime. You can spread pro-Russia propaganda if you want to. You can spread anti-Russia propaganda if you want to. You can say whatever you want, but not anymore. According to the indictment, the criminals in question, quote, wrote articles that contained Russian propaganda and disinformation. Huh? They also gave speeches and posted videos that annoyed the State Department. Here's one of them.
There's a discussion about Russian military border buildup on its border with Ukraine, and how this represents a terrible threat to Ukraine by Russia. But there is no acknowledgement of the history that took us to this place, how the U.S. overthrew, participated in facilitating the overthrow of a government in Ukraine that was friendly to the Soviet Union. Nor does it talk about the history of this relationship between Ukraine and Russia. This is an ongoing aggression. It did not just start. It's all.
So what Tucker Carlson does here is that, this group is, I don't agree anything with this group at all, but we should be standing up for free speech. But what he does is take something that his audience in particular would agree with, and that's this talking against Ukraine war. He's using it as an example, but the example is something they happen to agree with.
It's been going on for a while, but the U.S. government relies on the ignorance of the people in this country and much of the world that's facilitated by people like Zuckerberg.
So, for whatever it's worth, we're not really sure who that guy is. We know he's American.
And he threw in Zuckerberg too, if you didn't hear. So he threw in Mark Zuckerberg too, which is another sort of punching bag of the Tucker Carlson show. So let's continue.
American, pretty sure that on a lot of issues we likely would not agree with him. A lot of what he just said in that video seems to be true. But even if it weren't true, even if he was wrong, it would still be constitutionally protected speech. In a free country, which we had until recently, you are allowed by definition to have dumb opinions. Most of us do, but not anymore. So that man you just saw is facing 10 years behind bars for expressing views about Ukraine that the Biden administration doesn't want to hear. That's terrifying. Does no one else think that's terrifying? It is terrifying. And to that man's credit, whoever he is, he saw it coming. Here he is at a rally last month.
They have declared that black people are so stupid that it takes Russians to tell us that we are oppressed. I have never known a moment of black freedom for my entire life. I have never read of a moment since the beginning of a colonial mode of production where black people have been free. And yet they're saying that we are agents of some foreign power because we say black people must be free.
Okay, again, we're not defending that guy because we agree with all of his views. We probably don't. That is totally irrelevant. Whether you agree with what someone is saying has nothing to do with his right to say it. Americans are allowed to say what they think is true, period. If they take that right away, you are no longer a citizen, you are a slave. Glenn Greenwald is the host of System Updates. He joins us tonight. Glenn, thanks so much for coming on. I'm actually in some ways glad that they went after a group of people I probably don't agree with on a lot of things because it just makes it so much clearer. This is not partisan. This guy is saying something the regime doesn't like, and they're trying to put him in jail. How is this happening in America?
I think one of the critical things to remember is even before January 6th, the Biden administration said their priority is to launch a domestic war on terror, to take all the tactics we used against Al-Qaeda and ISIS and foreign terrorist groups and direct it inward because they perceive that anti-establishment dissidents in America, like the person you just showed, are the real enemy. And that's what this is about. There's a foreign agents law that is supposed to be if you say things you don't really believe because some foreign government is paying you millions of dollars to say them, you have to register. That's not the case with these people. These are people who have been radical black leftists for decades. They're not the people the Democratic Party likes. They hate the Biden administration. They're against the war in Ukraine. And they claim that they found $500 here, $2,000 there that have origins in the Russian government for events they did. This is what we criticize Russia for. We fund opposition groups in Russia, and then Russia says those are foreign agents. And we object and we say a foreign agent is only somebody saying things a foreign government tells them to say. And now we're using that same theory. We say Russia makes Russia tyrannical to criminalize dissent in the United States. That's what this case is about.
So what's interesting about this is these are not MAGA people. These are the victims of systemic racism they're always lecturing us about, right? And their First Amendment rights have just been stripped, and they're looking at jail terms for having opinions Biden doesn't like. Where are the liberals? Where's Morning Joe? Where are all the sensitive white liberals to defend these people?
Where is AOC?
They're not.
Where's Bernie?
This is why I'm so
Where
glad
are
you're covering this case, Tucker, because this is the tactic that tyrants always use. When they want to implement an authoritarian precedent, they choose people that makes others uncomfortable. When they wanted to start banning people from the internet, they chose Milo Yiannopoulos and Alex Jones because they knew that even Republicans would say, I don't want to defend those people. They're a bridge too far. And then the precedent gets set and they expand it inward. Again, these are not people, the kind of black radicals, Democratic Party, establishment representatives like. They're people who attack the Biden administration, who don't vote Democrat. These are real dissidents, and they know that not even Democrats will defend them.
No, they're not taking money from Apple and Facebook. They weren't in on the BLM scam. They actually mean it. Now you're making me like them. Glenn Greenwald, I appreciate your coming on tonight and getting, as you always do, to the core issues underneath it all. Thank you.
Great to be with you, Tucker. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, the point is made at the end is like, where are all these people? Like, where are they now when it comes to this?